Hey Charles, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Dan. How are you?
I'm well. I'm probably a 8 out of 10.
Nice, nice. 8 out of 10 is good. I'm around seven, 7.5 probably. Um, it's strange doing our recording here at 3:15 in the afternoon. I'm used to just having that morning energy.
Yeah, I had to grab a little cup of coffee myself. So
What so I don't usually get to ask you this, but what's your work day been like so far?
workday's been great. Actually, this morning had a fantastic meeting for our marketing company with a guy who's actually developing a program for executives to teach critical thinking skills.
Oh,
It's
wow.
not just executives, but I mean that's his primary target. And basically, yeah, just how to make decisions. He owned a company right here around the corner with like 120 employees. They were focusing on sales and training people how to sell over the phone for other businesses.
Okay.
And then he's this is his passion project, and so he basically has a video course, and he's looking for a company to help market it. So there's
Nice.
yeah, it's kind of cool. It's a skeleton course, meaning it's got like overall broad concepts. It's a low price course, and then it's very easy to kind of dig into different areas of critical thinking based on the market that you want to touch.
Okay.
So critical thinking for, I mean, you know what what kind of employees to hire, or whether I should hire or fire an employee, or even around the holidays, what kind of presents should I buy, what kind of just everybody has to make these critical decisions throughout life. And so
Sure.
this is really great because you can kind of then after this initial structure, he's going to build a community, and through that there'll be some support through the community. And yeah, so we had a really productive meeting with him and his videographer, and that went really well. So we'll see what goes on for that. So
Cool. Very nice.
thank you. And how about you? How was your day?
Things have been pretty slow today. One of my larger clients had a power surge, and that knocked out some devices on their network, and I had to kind of guide them through rebooting some stuff, getting it back online, and being able to get connected back to the internet. So that was okay. And then this afternoon, I took my car to get washed and detailed after neglecting it for quite a few months,
Excellent.
and I drive a classic 2011 Toyota Yaris
That is a
that
classic. I was gonna
just
say if it's a
rolled.
2012, it's not classic yet,
No, exactly.
So
We're
right,
we're 10
yeah.
years
The,
old now.
the, the 2011 Yaris, that's something to,
It was a
yeah,
great year for them.
yeah. It really
Absolutely, they were
was. It
really
really was.
really at the top of their game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got that done. It looks and smells very nice.
Oh, the smelling is
Well, I mean,
probably even more important than the
it
look, because yeah.
very nice might be a bit of an exaggeration. My car has 339,000 miles, so I think very nice probably left the room 200,000 miles ago.
So did you put
Um,
like two pine Christmas tree air fresheners in there? Did you
I
splurge
only
for the
I
the
only get
double
my air. No, I
dip?
told them not to put any air fresheners in at the car wash
Oh, so
because
you're just
I
gonna
get
let your
my.
your manliness just kind of waft over it, and that be the
No,
scent.
absolutely not. I get
No.
my air fresheners at Bed Bath and Beyond,
Oh. Oh.
and I spend the big money on my car air fresheners.
Oh.
And so when I go to the car wash, they can keep their cheap stuff and give it to the next guy because I already got my air freshener situation covered.
What I'm curious, what kind of freshing what kind of scent do you have? Is this vanilla spice? Is it
It is some kind
lilac
of
breeze?
like holiday spiced apple right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I always change it based on the season that I'm in. So
All right.
I've got it smelling pretty Christmassy inside right now, but it also smells like cleaning products because they did wipe down the dash and all that stuff. So it's a nice combo.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, knock people right out too. A little extra
Exactly.
bleach, coming off the
A little
dash
a
there.
little
Yeah,
bleach, a little pine sol, you put
yeah.
it together, you create chlorine gas.
Yeah.
I get my passengers hallucinating to the point that they think that it's a nice car.
What is this? A 2011 Yaris? I love it. I heard on a podcast it's a classic.
Good stuff.
That's great. So, uh, yeah, so I think we're talking about chapter 3 here. And
yes, I re-listened to the whole chapter on my morning walk today, as a matter of fact.
Fantastic. Excellent.
So I am ready to talk.
Yeah. So so speaking of a little self-care, the title of this chapter is Learning to Please Yourself. And really the solution to becoming a nice guy is learning how to really respect and honor yourself and get to know yourself. And Glover goes through a number of different ways to do that in this chapter, and also touches on the result of the childhood traumas that we've gone through, and
Right.
how that manifests and shows as an adult.
A big part of what we talk about for the rest of the book is going to be, we're going to be referring back to survival mechanisms that we talked about in the last episode, and having strategies to recognize them. And once you recognize them, then you can figure out a path to avoid just repeating those behaviors over and over again.
Right. Yeah. I mean, first part of any kind of solution is, being aware of the problem. Right.
Right.
And some of the things he talks about are, for seeking approval and getting validation from external sources rather than thinking about what you want and what's important to you. So, he references, people acting like a chameleon, really just kind of adapting to whatever situation, whatever people are around them,
Right.
because they feel like, well, if they don't, they're not going to be liked, and they're not going to have they don't have any inherent value, right? That toxic shame is there. They're not worth anything. So they better step up and be like everybody else. And, things like, their physical appearance or their talent, and maybe they, act overly nice, right? Or maybe they take, too much time and pride in, being a workaholic, or, maybe they look for things outside of themselves, like to validate them, such as, attractive child or a really attractive wife or a really nice car,
yes.
maybe they can't even afford, you know that struggle.
Exactly.
The nice car.
The half of the nice car, the 2011 Yaris. Absolutely.
Yeah. And even he even talks about keeping it clean too often. I think one of the examples in the book was a guy who has a habit of just, like washing the car every week. I mean, clearly you suffer that after washing the car every 6 months.
Yes, I've conquered
struggle
that
is
one.
real.
I put that one to bed quite a few years ago. I was able to conquer that tendency in myself.
Thank God for the book.
Yeah, I like his references to naming all of these external validations as attachments, and how he talks about having an attachment to this thing outside of yourself, so that you can basically you take something, whatever it is, your nice car, your physical appearance. One I can tend to fall into is my intellect, trying to be the smartest guy in the room, and you basically polish it up and put it on a pedestal, and then you point to it so everybody will look at that instead of looking at you.
Right. Yeah. That and by associating your identity with those things that are so perfect, right? Or valuable, objectively valuable, then they think, okay, well, I'm going to rub off that. Some of that's going to rub off on me and my value.
Right.
But really, people, they don't look at the person. They realize, hey, it's a nice car, but it doesn't really reflect anything about who that person is, other than, hey, they like nice cars, or hey, they need to be the smartest person in the room. Who are they as a person, though, when they're not being the smartest person in the room, right?
Right. And what happens when you put them in a room where they're clearly not the smartest person? How do they deal with that?
Yeah.
God, if that ever happens to me, I'm sure it'll be rough.
Yeah, let me know. You got me on speed dial if you need some support for that.
All right. So, then he rolls into the next part of the chapter, specifically talking about, the nice guy and the approval that he needs to get from women, and what that looks like, what that feels like, and what hoops guys are needlessly willing to jump through to feel like they're getting that approval.
Right. I mean, he says it's the ultimate validation of their worth.
Yeah,
of
that's
how much a woman wants to have sex with him, or how much she flirts with him, or even just a smile or a touch. And that is all, he's all basing his worth and his identity on that type of validation, which is a little dangerous.
it is, and I think that we can see some pretty easy parallels between a boy's relationship with his mother, and how that went when he was young, as well as what we talked about last time, going to school and having the vast majority of all of your teachers being authority figures who happen to be women. And if you got the approval from then by behaving in class and doing your homework, then you got a good grade, and when you took your good grades home, then you got more approval from your parents there. So it definitely, that also sets up a bit of a paradigm, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and then it kind of sets the tone of your own perspective. Not just, like, are you in a bad mood? If you're getting yelled at, yeah, you're not going to be in a great mood. So you're going to want to make sure whoever, is yelling at you, whoever's in charge of you, they're going to be happy. Right. So you're going to do everything in your power to make sure that they're happy. You can do all the right things. And now, you're really defining yourself based on what information you're getting from the women in your life, the teachers and your mother as well. And that can then eventually lead to what he calls basically rage, which is kind of interesting. You initially respect and love your authority figures, and your parents and things like that. You put them on this pedestal, and now when they don't do what you want them to do, they basically, you are in these relationships with women, and they're not acting and reading your mind and giving you what you want, because one, your needs aren't important, so you really don't want to express them. You don't really know how to express them, and then you never express them and expect them to read your mind. And when they don't do it, then all of a sudden, it's not all of a sudden, but over time, I should say, you kind of just build up this resentment. And he talks about how you can go from worshiping a god or a woman, and that can eventually turn into, to rage when things aren't delivered at the way you want them to be, or you expect them to be.
Yeah, because the pattern is generally when it starts happening, where you're approval seeking and you're trying to please them doesn't give you the results that you want it to, you then double down on those ineffective efforts and try to do the same things that aren't working. You do them harder and you do them more often.
Right. And because that's the only way, that's the paradigm you grew up with. So it's like, well, I just got to do them harder. Right. Or I got to do more of them. I'm not doing it right.
Until such a point where, the water behind the dam just keeps building up and building up and building up until you just freak out because you get so frustrated that the only thing that you think can work isn't working.
Yeah.
In my own personal experience, my signature move, or I should say the impulse that I have the most often when I found myself in those situations, was mostly to try to talk my significant other out of the negative feelings that I felt she was having. Like, here's why you shouldn't be depressed. Here's why you shouldn't be mad at me. Here's why this is actually nothing to worry about, and you're blowing it out of proportion. And you can imagine that, those discussions had exactly the result that you would think that they would have.
Right. And Glover actually talks about that in the next couple of sections in the book, in terms of being cover-up artists and hiding the evidence. Right. So things, what you just mentioned. So, for example, if you forget something, or if you're late, or, if you break something, or they're in pain, you cover that up. And you don't want anybody to see that you've made any of these mistakes, right? And so then basically you're trying to change reality by like you said, you're trying to talk them out of these ideas, right?
Right. Either this thing that you're upset about didn't happen, or, well, yeah, it did happen, but it's not a big deal. Right. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, we see politicians try to pull that over on citizens all the time. Either, oh no, the thing that you think happened, that didn't really happen. But if it did happen, here's why it's not a big deal.
I love it. Really. Yeah. The other thing that I know I did, which was maintaining an account. Basically, if you do enough good things, that when you do something bad, you've got credits. You can deduct from that account, and you can, hey, you've done all these wonderful things, so this doesn't matter. Or another way of like, keeping track of things, like, I did all these wonderful things for you. What, you should be doing some of these things for me, or you should be doing something for me. And again, it would be okay if I had communicated what those needs were, and I didn't, and a lot of nice guys don't do that either. And that's where they get frustrated.
And we'll talk about covert contracts, as throughout the book. But the thing is, overt contracts are fine. If you go to a person, whether it's somebody in business or in your personal life, and you say, hey, I'd like to engage in an arrangement with you where I do this thing for you, and then you in return do this thing for me, and both people know about it and you're completely clear, that's not a problem. The problem is when when conflict comes up, and as cringy as it is to talk about, I've had this exact conversation where I've said, look, I understand you're upset about me. You're upset at me about this thing that I did, but we both know that I'm a pretty good guy. And so maybe you could just give me a pass and not worry about this. Like, I've had that exact conversation, and thinking back on it now gives me the chills that I would have the gall to say something like that to somebody. Yeah.
He talks about the deer response, and it sounds like you might be, the defend, explain, excuse, and rationalize. I was just wow, that sounds
big four. Yeah, the big four of Charles's conflict resolution.
Right, plan. Right. He nailed it right there for sure. Yeah,
he really did.
And for me, not to just pick on you here, but he talks about turning the tables. And in arguments, I absolutely have blamed. I've brought up the past. I had a bad problem not letting go of the past when things were resolved. I kind of bring back bits and pieces to fit my current argument, deflection or pointing out the other person's issues and trying to completely change the subject, and instead of really addressing the issue at hand. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say another thing I would do that I don't know that it's on the list, but this is something I've done before, and you can tell me if you either experienced this on either end. When somebody's upset at you and you admit you did something wrong and you apologize, which, okay, those are good things, right? But then if they're still upset about it, it's like, oh, no, you don't get to be upset at me anymore. I already apologized, so this discussion's over, which is also a terrible thing to do to somebody. You did something, you got them upset, and then you get to set an artificial limit on how long they're allowed to be upset about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure I've done some form of that. I don't know if I've used those words, but I know mentally I've thought of, well, wait a minute, you can't complain about this anymore, right? Like this is right, similar type of thing. In my last relationship, I don't know if it's something that she taught me or something that I had picked up along the way, but that really kind of stuck with me. That helped is, when it comes to an argument, do I want to be right? Or do I want to resolve the issue?
Right.
And, in the past, I know I've tied too much of my ego and my pride to being right about something. And it's never worked out trying to prove somebody wrong, especially when emotions are running hot.
100%.
And so once I kind of change that perspective and go, okay, look, I don't need to be right. We don't need to agree that, this is the way things happened. It's how do we move forward? How do we find the solution? How do we get to that solution? That's the most important thing, because what's making me upset is not that I'm wrong. It's more about that we're having this issue. And once I discovered that, it was much better.
A couple that knows how to fight is able to quickly reframe things from me versus you to me and you against the problem.
Yeah, I like that. I like that frame of mind. I haven't heard that, but I really like that. Yeah.
And it's not easy to do in the moment when you've done something to get somebody mad at you, or they've done something to get you mad at them. It's hard to keep that perspective, but when it happens, it works out. When it doesn't happen, it doesn't.
Yeah. I like that. Kind of, we're on the same team here. Let's both work towards, resolving the issue here. Right. So speaking of resolving the issue, the end of the chapter starts talking about what to do to recover from nice guy syndrome. And he talks about self-approval, and basically, the ironic part is when a nice guy gets a little bit more selfish. A lot of times we feel like being selfish is a bad thing, but it's more about when a nice guy focuses on pleasing themselves, they really start to then get what they want, which is connection and intimacy with others. Not just any type of relationship. At that point, you make a better connection. So I wanted to ask you, well, why do you think that is? How is pleasing yourself going to improve connecting with others, in your opinion?
Well, the thing is, I mean, if you don't know how to meet your own wants and your own needs, then you're a bottomless pit. And what story has ever ended with the bottomless pit helping somebody out of a jam? It just doesn't. That's not the way that it ever works, right?
Correct.
I mean, yeah. If you're constantly, or you're a black hole looking to just bring in things to make you feel good enough, and that's your main underlying concern. Right. It's like, how can you possibly meet the actual needs that somebody has? I mean, you might be able to put a lot of effort, and we're going to talk about this in our next episode. You can put a lot of effort into meeting the perceived needs that you think the people around you should or probably do have, but that's going to come out of your own weakness and your own inadequacy because you're making those decisions for them. Here's what I think you need, so here's what I'm going to give you, instead of being able to help them with what they actually need or what they actually want. And that way you can set up a functional relationship between the two of you where you're able to help each other out instead of just being so concerned with getting your own needs met from another person.
For sure. I mean, and also if you are not expressing who you are, what your needs are, what you like, your honest thoughts about a situation, like you said, one, you're not really contributing any kind of valuable information to the situation, but also you're not allowing the people you're trying to connect with to really get to know the real you. You are then, you've got this facade on that you really do, you like, classic, 2011 Yaris's or things like that. Right. And, and that might not really be the case. And so now these people don't know who you really are. And because of that, they're never going to be able to get close enough to you where they can actually be a benefit or a help in your life either. But you're then kind of, he talks about being a Teflon man, right? You're kind of keeping everybody at arm's length. You're putting up a wall. They really don't know who the real you is. And so once you are okay, showing, hey, this is what I like, this is what I need. That gives them something to hold on to, a connection to hold on to. Right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the job of trying to anticipate other people's needs or decide what their needs should be while never actually talking to them or asking them about it, that takes up so much time that you're not possibly going to have any time to meet your own needs,
right?
Or share them with somebody else in a real way.
Yeah. I mean, he talks about, again, being aware, trying to figure out what kind of what kind of approval seeking behavior you do. Where does that show up in your life? And just trying to build some awareness around it. So then you can kind of, pause for a second, go, hey, wait a minute. What do I really want? What feels right to me? What would make me happy? And sometimes when you're in the heat of the moment, that could be really difficult to do because you've got all these other, things coming at you and information flowing. So something that I know you do a lot of, which is really great, is spending time alone, doing some traveling alone, some trips, by yourself. Yes, you're doing stuff. You're not out, in the middle of the woods, but it gives you time to figure out, hey, I like these kinds of things. It gives you time to think and really separate yourself out of that typical environment, because it's also a lot of times these are places where nobody knows you either. So there's no other expectations on you, right? I know you just came back from a trip to Chicago and had some great pictures from that.
Yeah, I mean, in those scenarios, I do enjoy the fact that I get to do what I want, I get to dress how I want, I get to spend my time doing what I want, and there's nobody along with me that I'm trying to impress with my deep knowledge or anything like that. I mean, I'm just I'm doing what I want to, and then I share it with my friends on social media, and they get to see the kinds of things that I'm about when there's nobody there with me that I have to impress. I mean, I do enjoy, when I have somebody in my life and I travel with them, obviously I love that too. But I think it's important not to neglect that time by yourself, because, it is a way to sort of recharge your battery and remind yourself what you're about when you're alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, he also talks about doing some self-care at home. Maybe kind of brainstorming a list of things that you can do, exercising, eating some healthy food, going to get a massage, going out with your buddies, listening, even just like listening to music, cleaning the house, whatever, whatever that is. Just try to, separate yourself out from all of the, the inputs that we're processing all day long.
I mean, up high on my list has always been going for walks and listening to either audiobooks or podcasts that I get a lot out of, and just spending my time alone and looking at stuff and listening to stuff. And I consider that one of my most important pieces of self-care, that as well as mindfulness meditation that I try to do every day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the other piece too is he talks about doing some positive affirmations. And one of the guys that I followed over the last few years, Andy Dooley, really kind of helped me reframe these affirmations, because I've been hearing about positive affirmations for years, and where you basically say, hey, you need to write out exactly what you want in the present tense in terms of and act like you're already there. Like I'm already, I make seven figures, and I've got a lean muscular physique, and I eat the perfect food at every meal, and I've got loads of friends and family that are wonderful relationships, and a lot of these things are just so, for me, they were so unrealistic. You might as well be just reading off a grocery list, because I didn't believe any of them. I was just like, what, this doesn't apply. This is not me. This is not, and what he did, in some of his courses, he talked about, a lot of, from going from 0 to 60, he eases you into it. So basically you would say, I am starting to learn how to exercise. I am beginning to make healthier choices when I eat food, right? So it's more of a believable, hey, because that's really what you're starting to do. You aren't there yet, but by saying those things, that you're in an action way, working towards that, with obviously the intention, to become that. For me, that hits home more. It's more believable, and for me, that's more powerful.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that one of the things that Glover does a good job of, we covered the idea of toxic shame in an earlier episode, and he did in an earlier chapter. The thing to remember is you should find a good resource for these positive affirmations, and you should craft them to be believable to where you are today. Because the thing is, if deep down you see yourself as unworthy, you're not going to believe these messages that you're telling yourself, because you're going to think, I'm not a good source for this information, because I'm not good enough to tell myself that I'm worthy of anything.
Right.
And so, it's got to be a matter of, finding a source for these. I use the I Am app on my phone, which I like. Some of them don't apply to me, and some of them I read it, I think about it, no matter whatever pops up, I take a deep look at it. But I'm also willing to say, okay, this one's not for me. Oh, but this one's really for me. This is something I really need to tell myself.
Right.
And even just starting with the idea of not reading, not seeing something that says I am worthy of love, because depending on where you are in your life and what your circumstances are, you might not believe it when you hear your own voice saying it. You can turn that into, I'm probably more worthy than I feel right now.
Yeah. You said that the other day for something else. And I was like, that's great, the way you phrased that. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that can be just a little, open yourself up to the idea that you're a little better than you feel right now. And then if you do that every day, you'll just keep feeling better and better about yourself.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Hey, there's a chance. Other people are saying it. So maybe there's a chance that this could be true at some point. Exactly. At some point. Right. And then that just kind of keeps the door open. And I think also makes you willing to do other things that are related to that, to that affirmation too. He talks about, don't just say these affirmations, is you should be trying to do some sort of activity that supports those affirmations as well in some little format.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you, go ahead and, take $80 of your hard-earned money and buy yourself a nice men's facial or a massage, And once you get out of there, you're going to feel like, okay, well, I clearly spent this money on myself, so I must have thought I was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And he talks about how that could make you really uncomfortable at first, because, right, it gets, that's not something that you normally do. But keep at it. Trust me. It gets easier. It gets more believable the more physical senses you can involve with this, not just saying it, not just thinking it, you're experiencing, you're feeling it, that's absolutely gonna, and then you're going to have this energy about you, you're going to kind of have a little bit more of a skip in your step, and you might get some compliments here and there from people. And that also helps.
Yeah, 100%. And the self-care thing has not been my challenge in the past. I know what makes me feel better. And so when I'm not feeling good, I tend to do those things, and I definitely see a benefit. So I would encourage people who think, nah, that's not for me. Give it a shot, fellas. Right. Try it out and see how you feel.
You don't know until you try it, right? Just like, a new food, right? You can't say you don't like it until you try it. And more often than not, I'm going in with a skeptical mindset for these things. And I'm always surprised about how great it turns out to be. So yeah. All right. This is great. So looking forward to the next chapter. And what is chapter 4 about, Charles?
Chapter 4, and I was just going through this, listening to this one as well today. Let me see here. Make your needs a priority. And the quote that he opens it up with is from a session that he has with one of his clients, where his client said, "I want you to know that I'm really uncomfortable with that thing we talked about last week."
Okay.
Yeah. So that leads to some interesting discussions about guys trying to make their needs a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. That's that. I still struggle with that, as we've said before, both of us are leading learners here. By no means we have this figured out, and we're struggling with it as well. And we're by doing this podcast, we're hoping that kind of brings to light a little bit more of the things that that we're struggling with. And if you guys all out there can identify with that, and can get any value out of that and relate, then that makes it all worthwhile for us.
100%. All right. Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate you taking the lead on this one, and we'll come back for the next episode next week and hit chapter 4.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. All right. Have a good week.
Thanks. You too.
Yep.
Bye.